Welcome back to the grim derpness of the 42nd millennium. Given the success of my last video on the Leman Russ, you made it very loud and clear that you wanted me and my Blood Angels hoodie to take on the Baneblade super heavy tank next. So let's pump that algorithm up and get a tanker's view of the Baneblade.
Baneblade ready for new orders. The Emperor speaks through these guns.
So as I start this video, I'd like to start by saying thank you to each and every one of you who's subscribed over the last 2 weeks. You left some wonderful comments and made my Leman Russ video the most popular video I've ever put on YouTube. So to all of you, each and every one of you, thank you. The Emperor protects. And if you're not subscribed, I'd still love if you would, and give me the old thumbs up, maybe leave me a comment down below. So with my self-service out of the way, let's give you exactly what you're after. The Baneblade, and boy howdy have we got a lot to cover. I'm going to begin by saying, this is all in fun, only my own personal opinion based on my time as a tank crewman. We all know 40k lore is inconsistent from novel to novel, games, and even codices. So I'm just going to look at the Baneblade overall, interject my opinions of how practical I think it may be from my own perspective. I'm going to miss probably a bunch of points you're all going to point out to me in the comments down below. You know what? That's fine. But I'm just trying to keep the runtime down for you. So with all of that out of the way, let's praise the Holy God Emperor of mankind and have some fun. The Baneblade is the premier super heavy tank of the Imperium, conceived of during the dark age of technology, and it may be the oldest STC ever recovered by the Mechanicus. Of course, the tech priests of Mars will covet this STC with every steel tentacle at their disposal. It's only produced on 3 worlds, Mars, Lucius, and Esteban 7. Mars apparently produces the only true Baneblade, all is considered counterfeit because they are slightly larger, slightly heavier, and a little bit slower, because of the inferior ores that the Forge worlds actually receive outside of Mars. So rare, so valuable are these massive behemoths that they're typically reserved for regimental commanders as mobile command bases. Given the sheer size and mass of these things, it seems like less of a tank and more of a mobile battle fortress, a la Bolo. But mankind, and by extension the Imperium of Man, have never been one for subtlety, have they? Most armored regiments are fortunate to have a single Baneblade within their ranks. If they're extremely fortunate on a Forge world, they may have a company of 5. But deep in the Imperium's history, there may have been whole divisions of these behemoths, but as time and the Imperium have marched inexorably forward, these numbers have dwindled, turning its premier fighting tank into nothing more than a prestige weapon. But who knows, in the future maybe Belisarius Skull's got a bunch of these hidden away somewhere, like he did with those 100,000 Space Marines. Moving on, I'm going to try to focus on the Mars pattern specs, only because I don't want this video to become an hour long. Most of the pictures are probably going to be the Lucius pattern or other patterns, but there's only so much art to go around. Weighing in at 316 tons, this thing is larger and heavier than any tank ever built today, even during the ridiculousness of the Cold War. Its closest real-world analog would be the Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus, clocking in at 188 tons, 10.2 meters long, 3.71 meters wide, and 3.63 meters high, with 500 millimeters ground clearance. Now the Baneblade is thick, 3 C's thick, with 13.5 meters long, 8.4 meters wide, and 6.3 meters tall. This thing is literally the size of a medium house, and she holds just as many crew to boot, with 10 being needed to run this thing at maximum efficiency. It's got a ground clearance of 1.2 meters, and on the Lucius pattern, speaking up, what the F is this? Why do you seek to intentionally negate your ground clearance with all this trash along the skirts here? What is going on? Like I said, moving on, this thing moves from 18 to 25 kilometers per hour, and it's powered by a multi-fuel V18 power plant. Again, that will run on remotely anything combustible, probably even salamander piss, really. Anyways, now I'm not sure if this is lore accurate. Emperor knows I've spent several days searching, but it's rumored during the dark age of technology this thing was a scout tank? I really don't know if that would work, as it's slower than the Imperium's next biggest war machines, the Imperial Knight and Warhound Titan, but unless there's an undiscovered yet STC, I can't see this being the case due to its lack of speed maneuverability. Before you wildly start typing at me in the comments, I searched high and low on Reddit, Lexicanum, 40k fandom, and 1D4chan. And you know what everyone told me? No one can give me a concrete answer, no one could agree, and 40k lore is more than frustratingly complex at times, and it makes corroborating these claims very difficult. Therefore, it is my opinion at this time, short of any other evidence, that there's no way this could perform the role of a scout tank due to its maximum speed of 25 kilometers per hour and the fact that it's as large as a house, because this is what we call in the industry being as stealthy as a boner in a room full of women. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, there are minor variations with the Lucius pattern, mostly being 3 tons heavier and having a slightly larger power pack, with added cooling, exhaust, and transmissions to compensate for the added mass. Even though Mars is never really going to allow for side-by-side testing to prove its inferiority or superiority, it's nice to see in the 42nd millennium that export models of tanks are still being potentially degraded to hoard industry secrets. However, the Baneblade, even the counterfeit ones, their armor is still potent enough to turn away anything except the most dedicated of anti-armor weapons from the glacis and the flanks at an oblique angle. It's stated even a Tau hammerhead would require 3 precise shots in the same location to pierce its armor. That's not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination, and requires a very talented gunner. Now, it's tough to punch even through the glacis plate or flanks of a tank today. That's why we try not to aim there. We aim for turret rings, the roof, if we've got top attack munitions, or anywhere we can trap a shot or the armor is dead flat. Now, packing more firepower than your average South Texas household, the Baneblade comes festooned in weapons. The most obvious being its 10-meter long mega battle cannon. Now, try as I may to find a bore size for this, no one mentioned it, so I'm going to assume for the sake of this video it's 120 millimeters, same as the battle cannon, but 5 extra meters longer to increase its muzzle velocity, accuracy, penetration power, and range. It's double jacketed, pepper boxed inside with ports to allow for the exhaust gases to be vented in between shots. This is surprisingly logical thinking for G-dubs on that one. Must have had an armor enthusiast on the payroll at one time. What happened, G-dubs? The reason I am pointing this out because it's the same reason we have fume extractors on tanks today. It's to suck all those super hot gases out so when we're loading the next round in, it doesn't cook off in our hands. The Mega Battle Cannon fires a 1 meter long spin and fin stabilized rocket propelled ammunition with a solid propellant charge. Beside it is a coax autocannon which ranges for the main gun using tracer rounds. I find this interesting because all the Auspex arrays are in the searchlight and apparently linked to every gun. So I'm assuming the ranging is for when the gun is in degraded mode. Now the main gun is backed up by the massive Demolisher cannon, firing a similar but larger shell with a tandem warhead, comprising both of a fragmentation shell and a shape penetrator inside, utilizing the same principle as the Mega Battle Cannon, but with an effective range of about 1 kilometer. So I'm going to assume someone at G-Dub saw a picture of a Sturmpanzer once and said, hey, you know what that thing needs? More guns. Adding to the already obscene levels of firepower, this thing comes with 2 sponsons with twin-linked heavy bolters, 2 turrets with las cannons on top of those sponsons, and then a bow-mounted twin-linked heavy bolter up front. This thing packs as much firepower as a veteran squad of Terminators and maneuvers just as well. And as a little aside here, a few comments mentioned that sponsons, there's a reason we kick them off tanks in our own world, but in 40k, they engage hordes and hordes of soft targets, more than a standard coax or a pintle-mounted machine gun requires today, and there's only so much room to put RWS systems on a tank. So making it a little bigger and adding sponsons makes sense within its own universe, which is why I don't tend to pick on it too much, even though it does potentially weaken the armor. Looking inside this thing is absolutely insane. Despite its absolutely massive size, room is at a premium when riding in one, as is typical of most armored fighting vehicles even today. Most space is occupied by ordnance, equipment, and etc., comprising of 3, yes count them, 3 fighting decks, gunnery, command, and the lower deck, complete with bunk beds but exactly 0 room for activities.
This house is a fucking prison! I'm playing bullshit!
Well, because if you're going to build a tank the size of a house, why not bring the bedroom with you, right? And the interior resembles less of a battle tank and more of a battleship. Again, given the size, not surprising, but what blows my mind on this is that there are bulkhead doors in between every compartment to reduce the risk of a blowout in case of a hull breach. G-dubs thinking again. Awesome. But then again, I'm reminded this was built and designed during a time when humanity allegedly had more than an inkling of what they were doing when it came to armor design. The crew is broken up into roughly their own compartments with Vox between them. Pretty standard on any tank. I wouldn't expect it to change any time in the future. We do the same thing in our vehicles. We all communicate by radio. We compartmentalize all the crew in their own station. Now, given this thing's size, I really am surprised it doesn't possess an ion shield generator a la Imperial Knight to prevent top-down attacks. Or maybe it really does and no one's got the right litany of awakening to turn it on. And finally, and why you're all here, my conclusion. The Baneblade is the Imperium's wrath and warfighting philosophy made manifest. Slow, massive, inexorable, and overly gunned. But without constant close-in support and air superiority, this thing is a massive, massive target. Yes, in single combat it finds any if few equals. But war is never single combat, even in 40k. Well, mostly. But that's negating the exception and not the rule. The Baneblade is too slow, too ungainly for frontline service without the aforementioned support. This vehicle wouldn't even be suited for rear service with quick reaction forces because it can't keep up. Outside of very specialized roles, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense even within its own universe. But our lives are the Emperor's currency and he will spend it how he wishes in his divine wisdom. It can't keep pace with a Russ, a Chimera, or a Land Raider, and most of its weapons are shorter range. Now, it becomes a liability as it falls behind any advance or slows any advance to a crawl as it putters along at a crisp 18 to 25 kilometers per hour. I really think Call should probably solve this issue, maybe put down his hentai collection and get on this. And with that statement, I'm going to go report to my local commissar for processing into a servitor. Anyway guys, if you liked my content, please like and subscribe, leave me a comment down below, and with that, I will see you on the next one.